Welcome to Dream Haunt Tales, the channel where midnight murmurs lull you into drowsy dread. I know you put this on to slip quietly into sleep, so if these whispered nightmares help you drift off, tap subscribe, leave a soft like, and share in the comments where you're listening from. Tuck in, if you dare. The rain had started hours ago, gentle at first, then steadily heavier. It drummed lightly on the roof of James' car's old sedan as he squinted at the blurry road signs, windshield wipers squeaking with every pass. He hated driving at night, especially in weather like this. But work had kept him late again, and now he was crawling through some backroad forest detour, trying to make it home before midnight. His GPS, a second-hand model clinging to the cracked dashboard, had frozen about 10 minutes ago. The display still blinked a distorted map of nowhere, the signal icon grayed out. James reached over to smack the side of the device like that might fix it. No luck. The road narrowed as trees pressed in on both sides, tall and silent, their branches swaying like arms whispering warnings. He hadn't seen another car for over half an hour. Just headlights, drizzle, and the endless shadow of pine. This can't be right, he muttered to himself, voice barely audible over the hum of the engine. Suddenly, the trees broke to the right. Through the fog and down a narrow path, a structure emerged. The high beams caught it all at once, a house, old and timbered, leaning slightly forward as though craning to listen. James slowed the car. He wasn't sure why. Curiosity, maybe. Or the sudden, irrational thought that someone might be inside, someone who could give him directions. He tapped the brakes and rolled to a soft stop on the gravel shoulder. His hazard lights blinked faintly in the mist. Then, his phone vibrated. No service. But still, a message. "We see you." He stared at the screen. The number was unknown. A chill crept over his skin. Slowly, James looked back up at the house. A curtain on the second floor had moved. James swallowed hard, his breath fogging the inside of the windshield. The wipers kept sliding back and forth, but the fog outside only grew thicker, muting the edges of the house like it was sinking into a dream. Or something worse. He rubbed his eyes and tried to laugh it off. Maybe it was some local kid pulling a prank with a signal spoofer. He didn't know much about tech, but that seemed more likely than whatever his brain was trying to suggest. Still, the curtain. That movement hadn't been wind. It had been slow. Deliberate. He reached for the phone again. No signal. He checked the message, just the one, still glowing on the screen. "We see you." Another text came in. This time, only 2 words. "Come inside." His mouth went dry. He looked back at the house, hands gripping the steering wheel tight. The porch was lit now, faintly, by a single bulb that hadn't been on a second ago. There was no visible cable, no electric pole nearby. But the light burned with a sickly orange hue. No. This was insane. He reached for the gear shifter. But the car didn't move. James glanced at the dash, the engine was still on, but the tires didn't respond. He pressed the gas. Nothing. Just a soft groan beneath the hood, like the car had grown tired too. Another buzz. This message was a photo. His own car, headlights glowing in the dark. Taken from behind him. From inside the house. James stared at the photo on his phone. It was undeniably his car, unmistakably now, the same fog, the same angle of the headlights. The image was crisp, too crisp. No grain, no blur. It had been taken from a high vantage point, probably the second floor. From inside the house. He jerked around in his seat, heart hammering, scanning the road, the woods, the porch. No movement. His breath was loud in the cabin. It fogged the windows more, made it harder to see. He wiped a circle clear on the driver's side and peeked through again. Still no one. The porch light flickered once. then held. Then the front door creaked. He didn't open it. He didn't step outside. It opened itself. James flinched. The door didn't slam or creak wildly, it just drifted open, like someone had been standing behind it with a hand on the knob, waiting for their moment. A black rectangle yawned open where the entrance had been. No hallway visible. Just a yawning dark. And from inside that dark came a sound. Soft. Delicate. Like a child humming a lullaby. James dropped the phone onto the passenger seat, reached down, and twisted the key in the ignition again. The engine was running. The battery was fine. So why couldn't he move? The wheels locked. And now the humming had stopped. Because something was stepping out onto the porch. It wasn't human. Or if it had once been, time had done terrible things to it. The figure that emerged from the doorway was tall, impossibly tall, its head brushing the porch roof. Its limbs moved too smoothly, like it wasn't bending bones, but gliding. It wore a long coat. Or maybe that was part of its body. The shape was wrong, too narrow at the bottom, too heavy at the top. But what froze James wasn't its size. It wasn't the way it tilted its head, or how it moved in pulses instead of steps. It was the face. There wasn't one. Just a mirror. Round and polished. Where a face should be, there was a perfect oval of reflective silver. And in that mirror face, James saw himself. Sitting in the car. Paralyzed. The thing didn't walk toward him. It stood at the edge of the porch and waited. Then came the noise. Not from the figure, but from behind James. In the back seat. It was the unmistakable click of a phone unlocking. His phone was on the front seat. So what had just unlocked behind him? James didn't turn around. Not immediately. He was afraid to find out what had joined him. The air inside the car had gone cold. Not just chilly, cold, like standing in a walk-in freezer. James could see his own breath plume in the darkness, short and panicked. He heard the quietest inhale behind him. Shallow. Raspy. Human. Something was in the back seat. He didn't move. Didn't breathe. His eyes scanned the rearview mirror, but fog had crept across the glass, erasing the reflection. All he could see was a vague outline behind him. A shadow. Then, the voice. It was close. Right by his ear. "I thought you were coming inside." Male. But wrong. Like the voice was stitched together from other voices, different accents, pitches, overlapping whispers. And yet it still somehow knew his name. James. He couldn't speak. Couldn't scream. Could only run, but not with his feet. With his mind. Without thinking, James flung open the driver's side door and threw himself out into the gravel, slipping on the wet ground and catching himself with a scraped palm. He scrambled up, half running, half limping down the road away from the house. He didn't look back. Not even once. The fog swallowed him fast. Every direction was the same, just trees and mist and a suffocating silence. Until he stopped. Because the house was in front of him again. Same porch. Same open door. Same mirror-faced figure. Waiting. James froze. His chest heaved, lungs burning from the sprint. The blood rushing in his ears nearly drowned out the eerie quiet. But there it was again. The house. Exactly the same distance from him as before. Same porch light casting a warped orange halo. Same figure still standing at the threshold, unmoving, like a painting that had been waiting to be noticed. "No," he whispered to himself. He spun on his heel and ran the opposite direction. Down the road, into the trees. Branches scratched his arms and face, roots threatened to trip him, but he didn't stop. This time, He didn't look until he had counted 60 full seconds in his head. When he did, the house was ahead of him again. This time, the porch light was off. The door was closed. But the curtain on the second floor, it fluttered. And a pale hand slowly reached out and pulled it shut. James backed away. His mind spun, searching for some logic. Hallucination? Carbon monoxide? A dream? No answers came. He turned in place, trying to orient himself. The road was gone. The trees had shifted. What had been a clear path before was now swallowed by trunks and fog. Then he heard it. Footsteps. Soft ones. Crunching leaves. Getting closer. He ducked behind a fallen tree, crouching low, trying to steady his breath. His scraped hands trembled, stinging. The footsteps stopped just on the other side of the tree. James dared a glance. Shoes. Black. Polished. Attached to pressed slacks. A man stood there, breathing softly, hands hanging at his sides. He didn't move. Then he spoke. James, the voice was familiar. Too familiar. James' stomach turned. Because that voice, calm, warm, gentle, belonged to his father. Who'd been dead for 6 years. He hadn't heard that voice since the funeral. Not in dreams. Not even in memory. But now it floated on the fog like a thread tied to something beneath the surface. James didn't move. James, son, you out here, the man said again. He sounded confused. Concerned. Like he'd just found his son wandering the woods. But James didn't answer. Because his father had died in a car crash. Closed casket. No remains visible. James had identified him only through dental records. The figure shifted closer to the log. I know you're scared. That house, it does things to your mind. James still said nothing. Then came a quieter voice, behind him this time. A woman's whisper. You let me burn, James. He spun around. No one there. But he recognized that voice, too. It was Melissa. His ex. The one who died in the apartment fire. And he remembered now, she'd called him that night. He hadn't picked up. James bolted again, teeth gritted, ignoring the voices, the memories clawing their way up from beneath his ribs. The trees blurred past him. His legs burned. The forest seemed endless. Until it wasn't. He stumbled back into the clearing. The house. Still there. Closer than ever now. The porch stairs beckoned. The door was wide open again. But something had changed. Music drifted out this time. Old, crackling jazz. Like a record playing from another room in an old hotel. Warm. Inviting. The figure on the porch was gone. James stood still, panting. He knew what it wanted now. The house didn't chase. It didn't drag. It waited. It always waited. And now, it had caught up. James stepped forward. Slowly. 1 foot onto the first stair. The wood groaned beneath him. Rain fell soft and steady around him, soaking his clothes, plastering his hair to his forehead. Another step. The porch creaked. No figure. No voice. Just that record playing somewhere deep inside. Something from another time. He hesitated at the doorway. The darkness inside was thick. But not empty. It felt like something just beyond the threshold was holding its breath. He reached a hand out. The air inside the house was warmer than outside. Dusty. Sweet, almost. Like old perfume. Then his phone buzzed again. He looked down. You're home. The door slammed behind him. The darkness swallowed James as the door slammed shut behind him. He spun around, reaching for the knob, but there was none. Where the handle should have been, there was only smooth, splintered wood. No lock. No seam. No exit. He cursed under his breath and pulled out his phone. The screen flickered. Dim, warped. It still showed the last message, "You're home." He lifted it to light the room. The beam barely pierced the gloom, but enough to show a hallway stretching forward, narrow, with faded wallpaper peeling like old scabs. A dusty chandelier dangled overhead, unmoving. The jazz music still played, distant, as though drifting through the walls from somewhere deeper inside. He took a step. The floor groaned. Another step. The hallway felt longer than it looked. The shadows on the edges didn't shift as he moved. They remained still. Watching. And as he passed a cracked mirror hanging askew on the wall, he froze. His reflection wasn't moving. James blinked. Then blinked again. But the reflection didn't. It stood still, arms at its sides, face blank, not expressionless, blank. A blur. A smear where his features should be. He waved. Nothing. Then the reflection slowly lifted its hand, but not in a wave. It pressed its palm to the glass. James stepped back. The mirror rattled on the wall. Hairline cracks spidered outward from the center of the reflection's face. The surface rippled like disturbed water. Behind the mirror self, something else emerged. A shape. Too tall. Thin-limbed. Wearing that coat. Its head gleamed silver. Mirror-faced. James stumbled away, nearly dropping his phone. The music stopped. The hallway was silent again, except for a new sound. Breathing. Wet. Ragged. Coming from the walls. He walked faster now. The hallway grew tighter. The walls seemed to lean inward the deeper he went, wallpaper sloughing off like old skin. His shoes left wet prints on the dusty wood, though he hadn't stepped in water. Doors lined either side now. Closed. Unmarked. Some rattled gently as he passed, as if something behind them was pacing. A child whimpered behind one. A woman sobbed behind another. "Help me," whispered a voice from the ceiling vent. He didn't stop. Couldn't. He came to a staircase. It led up, spiraling tightly into shadows. Carved wood banister. Cracked steps. And at the base of it, a table. On it sat a small photograph in a cracked frame. James leaned in. It was him. But much younger. 6, maybe. Standing in a yard he didn't recognize. Next to a woman whose face was burned out of the image. Scorched. As if erased. He never took that photo. He took the photo with him, tucked into his jacket, then stepped cautiously onto the stairs. Each creaked louder than the last, echoing far too long, like the wood was calling attention to him. Halfway up, he heard it again. That lullaby. Soft, drifting down from above. Sung in a high, whispery voice. Off-key. Childlike. It made his skin crawl. He climbed. Slowly. Hands brushing the cold, splintering railing. At the top, a landing. Narrow. 2 doors. One open, one cracked. He looked toward the open one. A faint blue glow leaked out. Television light. He stepped toward it. Inside was a small child's bedroom. Toys scattered. Posters peeled from the walls. Dust suspended midair like snow. A TV played in the corner. Static. White and hissing. Then a child's voice, layered beneath the static. Don't let it see your face. James stepped back. The TV turned off. The door slammed behind him. James spun, alone again. The blue light now gone. He turned back, but the room was different. The toys were missing. The posters gone. The window now boarded up. And the bed? Occupied. A figure lay there under the covers. Perfectly still. He stepped closer, heart racing. Slowly reached for the blanket. A sudden knock. From inside the wall. Then another. Then a dozen. Fists. Banging. Scratching. Nails raking down the drywall. James backed away. The knocking turned to pounding. The figure in the bed sat up. It wore his face. But smiling. And its eyes. Solid black. James stumbled back as the thing on the bed leaned forward. Its smile widened, too wide. Skin stretching like paper over a balloon, the cheeks cracking slightly at the edges. No teeth. Just a soft, pulsing darkness inside its mouth. A void. "Why do you keep running?" it asked, in his own voice. But it didn't move its lips. James turned and bolted. The door wouldn't open at first, it resisted, like something on the other side was holding the knob from turning. Then, release. He spilled back into the hallway, gasping. The air was thicker. Like the house was breathing. Behind him, the room went silent. The door eased shut. Then the TV inside flicked on again. But this time it didn't play static. It played a recording of James standing in that very room. From moments ago. Being watched from behind. James ran. Past the cracked doors. Past the old photo frame, which was now empty. The hallway twisted in a way he didn't remember. Turned inward. Then down. Gravity itself shifted. A new door appeared ahead, black, iron, rounded like the entrance to a vault. It looked wrong. Ancient. No handle. Just a keyhole. James reached for it, and it opened for him. The room beyond was pitch black. He stepped in. The door slammed. Total silence. He couldn't even hear his own breathing. Then the light returned, not overhead, but from below. Words appeared, glowing faintly across the floorboards. "We remember everything you've forgotten." James looked around, but the walls were gone. It was just him now. And a dozen figures slowly rising from the floor. No faces. No features. But every one of them wore his clothes. The figures circled him, gliding silently across the blackened floor. One of them reached out a hand, its palm split open, revealing an eye. James jerked back. The room blinked. When he opened his eyes again, he was somewhere else entirely. A wide room. Well lit. Tall ceilings. It looked like an art gallery. White walls. Clean wood floors. And down the walls, a series of framed paintings. Each canvas held a memory. Not just images, but moments. James saw himself on his 10th birthday, crying in a closet while his parents argued. He saw the time he'd cheated on a test in college and lied about it. He saw Melissa, in flames, reaching for the phone. Each painting was more painful than the last. At the end of the gallery stood a blank canvas. Waiting. A brush and palette sat below it. Paint still wet. And next to it, a sign. "Finish your portrait." James stepped forward. He picked up the brush, too light, too worn, and turned to face the blank canvas. For a moment, nothing came. Then the memories surged. All the guilt, all the regret, every thought he'd pushed away for years. They flooded into the brush. Without thinking, he painted. Strokes jagged and wild. The image formed slowly, a version of him, hunched, with hollow eyes, surrounded by the same shadowed faces that had haunted this house. Behind them, the house itself. towering, alive, breathing, bleeding from the windows. When he stopped, the painting was done. And now the brush was stuck in his hand. Melted. Fused. The lights went out. And the painting moved. His painted self turned toward him. And smiled. The gallery dissolved. James was in the hallway again. Alone. Except, no longer upstairs. Now he was back near the entrance. The door was there again, but still knobless. Useless. Another door had appeared to its left. This one was narrow. Old. With a rusted handle. The kind of door you'd find in a basement. Cold air leaked from underneath. A faint dripping echoed beyond. James stood frozen. He didn't want to go down. But something was pushing. Not physically, but in his mind. A pressure. Like fingers pressing gently on the back of his skull. He opened it. Steps descended into darkness. A voice drifted up from the void. "I missed you, James." It was his mother's voice. She'd been dead since he was 12. James stood at the top of the basement stairs, heart thudding. His mother's voice echoed again, softer this time. "Come down, sweetheart. It's okay now." His fingers gripped the edge of the doorframe. The darkness below felt alive. Not just a lack of light, but something deliberate. Waiting. Watching. He stepped onto the first stair. It gave slightly beneath his weight, groaning like something waking up. Another step. Then another. The walls closed in as he descended. Moisture dripped down the stone. The air grew heavy, sour, like rotting paper and old milk. His mother hummed now. A lullaby he remembered from when he was a child. She'd hum it when he had nightmares. Funny. That's what this felt like now. A slow-motion nightmare. At the bottom, the light returned. Dim, yellow. It came from a bare bulb dangling in the center of a small, shoulders, bony. Her hair was long, white, disheveled. She was humming that lullaby. James's voice trembled. "Mom." The chair stopped. She slowly tilted her head, just slightly. Enough to acknowledge his presence. Then, she whispered. "Did you think I'd be gone forever?" James felt his legs weaken. She began to turn the chair, ever so slowly. But something inside him screamed, "Don't look." He shut his eyes and stumbled backward. Something laughed, not her voice, but something layered beneath it. He opened his eyes. The chair was empty. But small child-sized footprints led away from it. James followed the footprints. They led to another door. Wooden, but smaller. Child-sized. The knob was low. Tiny. He hesitated. Then crouched, turned it, and pushed. Inside, a playroom. Bright colors. Toy blocks. A train track that circled the room, the train still moving. But everything was wrong. The walls were pulsing, as if made of muscle. The toys were rotting. Stuffed animals with missing eyes and seams split open like wounds. On the far side sat a boy. Alone. Playing with a small wooden figure. James stepped in. The boy didn't look up. But James recognized him. It was himself. At 6 years old. Muttering to the doll. Repeating the same phrase. "Don't open the red door. Don't open the red door. Don't open the red door." James backed away slowly, heart racing. The child version of him continued his chant, softly, over and over, rocking slightly on his knees. Then he stopped. And looked up. His eyes were black. Hollow. And he smiled. "I told you not to open it. A crash sounded behind James. He turned, and now the playroom had changed. All the walls were red. The train track was a spiral. The toys hung from the ceiling by strings. And there, at the center of the far wall, a door. Blood red. No handle. No frame. Just a rectangle of crimson. It pulsed. James felt drawn to it. His feet moved against his will. The child stood, still smiling. Now you have to go in. You looked too long. The red door opened on its own. And black smoke spilled out. James stepped through. The world changed. No more house. No more walls. Just a vast, circular room made of stone and bone. The floor was alive, he could feel it pulsing, like standing on the chest of something asleep. A massive eye opened in the ceiling. Just one. Slit-pupilled. Pale. And focused directly on him. The voice came from everywhere. Not a whisper. Not a shout. A presence. You are mine now. James dropped to his knees, head swimming. The walls began to breathe. In and out. Flesh stretching. In the center of the room, a figure rose from the floor. Tall. Silver-faced. Coat trailing like smoke. And in one hand, it held a mirror. James's reflection inside, was screaming. James couldn't look away. His reflection, trapped inside the silver mirror, was pounding against the glass, silently mouthing words he couldn't hear. Blood ran down from its scalp. Its eyes bulged with panic. The figure holding the mirror tilted its head. James stood, trembling. What do you want from me? The figure didn't answer. Instead, it turned the mirror toward the great eye above them. And the eye blinked. Slowly. Approvingly. Then, with sudden violence, the mirror shattered, not with sound, but with silence, like something had devoured the noise before it reached the air. Shards fell all around James. Some passed through him. Others stuck in his skin. But there was no pain. Only memory. And suddenly, he was somewhere else. The sound of fire was the first thing he heard. Then, alarms. Screams. The crackling of wood giving way. James stood in a small kitchen, light flickering red and orange. Smoke curled along the ceiling like it was hunting something. He recognized the room. Melissa's apartment. The night she died. James looked down. The phone was in his hand, screen glowing with a missed call. Her name. 15 minutes ago. He remembered now. He could have picked up. The smoke was getting thicker. From the hallway, he heard her coughing. Choking. He turned to run, to reach her, but the door was locked. No, it melted, the knob vanishing into the wall. He pounded on it, screaming her name. Then her voice whispered in his ear. You let me die. The walls peeled back. The apartment faded. Smoke turned to mist. James was back in the house, but it wasn't the hallway. It was a long corridor of doors. Hundreds of them. Stretching into shadow. All different colors. All unmarked. But one stood out. A black door with red edges, smoking, not burning. The knob was hot. James reached for it anyway. His skin sizzled, but he didn't pull away. The door swung open. Inside, Melissa. Sitting on the couch. Alive. She looked up and smiled. You finally came. Tears welled in his eyes. Melissa. But then he noticed her hands. Too long. Fingers with too many knuckles. Twisting in her lap like snakes. And her smile. Stretched. Then broke. Let's talk about the truth, she said. James stepped back, but the door behind him had vanished. Melissa stood. Her eyes flickered, black to brown to black again. Her voice split in two, his and hers, layered like a cursed duet. You left me. Not just the fire. Before that. You pulled away. You blamed me for your guilt. I didn't, James stammered. She kept walking forward. The room darkened with every step she took. You forgot my laugh. My voice. You rewrote me into a ghost long before I became one. The floor fell away. James plummeted through blackness, spinning through images, her face, the burning building, his own reflection, the gallery, the faceless child. Then silence. He landed hard. Back in the house. In the attic. The ceiling above him was low. Cobwebs draped like curtains. Dust thickened the air like snow. James pushed himself up, spine aching. The only light came from a single, flickering bulb. It swung from the ceiling, casting long shadows that moved independently from his own. He turned. The attic was filled with boxes. Each one labeled with his handwriting. High school. Dad's workshop. Melissa. Regret. He opened one. Inside, a VHS tape. Unlabeled. Warm to the touch. A TV sat in the corner. Old. Plugged into nothing. James slid the tape in. It clicked. The screen lit up. And there he was, sitting in the attic, watching the screen. Watching himself. Watching this moment. And then, something stepped into frame behind him. James spun around. The attic was empty. The TV kept playing. A few seconds behind reality. On screen James turned slowly, mimicking his own movements from moments ago. But in the footage, something was there behind him, a tall, slender figure. Silver-faced. Watching. James stepped toward the screen. His reflection in the glass warped, twisted, his face melted into something formless. The footage changed. Now, a bedroom. Small. Familiar. His childhood room. The closet door opened slowly. From the dark within, two eyes blinked open. James stepped back. The TV shut off with a pop. He was no longer in the attic. He was in his childhood bedroom. Exactly as it had been when he was 7 years old. Except, everything was breathing. The walls moved with quiet rhythm, like lungs. The carpet rippled with every exhale. The air smelled of old sweat and plastic toys. James stood still. Posters of cartoons he'd forgotten hung crookedly. His old stuffed bear, missing one eye, sat upright on the pillow, watching him. Then, the closet door creaked open. A slow sound. Familiar. No one inside. He approached carefully, heart thundering. Inside, darkness pooled like ink. No floor. No back wall. Only black. And from within it, his own voice whispered. Close the door. If you leave it open, it comes back. James reached out. But something else reached out first. A hand. His hand. But aged, burned, and bleeding. It grabbed him by the wrist and pulled. James screamed and yanked back. But the grip was strong, cold as stone. He felt himself tipping forward, the floor dissolving beneath him, pulled into the closet dark. Then, release. He fell backward, landing hard on wood. He was no longer in the bedroom. He was in a hallway. But not the house's original hallway. This one was infinite. Stretching in both directions, doors evenly spaced, the floor patterned like a checkerboard. Each light above flickered at a different rhythm. He couldn't see where it began. Or ended. At his feet was a box. Open. Inside, a mask. mirror surfaced. His reflection stared up at him. Behind it, his own face twisted in pain. There was a note beneath the mask. Wear it, or lose what's left. James picked up the mask. It was cold. But it didn't reflect right, it showed not his current self, but versions of him crying, screaming, curled up in fetal positions. It pulsed slightly in his hands, like a heartbeat. He looked down the infinite hallway. Far at the end, something was coming. Slow. Deliberate. He couldn't see it fully, just movement. Flickering like broken film. He didn't want to wait for it. James pressed the mask to his face. It latched on. Pain flared, brief, sharp, like a needle behind each eye. Then clarity. The hallway shifted. Suddenly, he could see through the walls. Inside every room, another version of him. Living out every failure. Every lie. Every moment he turned away instead of helping. He fell to his knees. And from behind, the whisper again. Almost there. The hallway began to darken. Not from the loss of light, but from figures appearing along its edges. Each of them wore the same mask James now wore. But their bodies were wrong. Bent. Twisted. Some crawled. Others dragged themselves. They moved in unison toward him. James stood and backed away, breathing hard. His mask whispered to him, not in words, but images. Of safety. Of forgetting. Of rest. But James clenched his fists. No, he said aloud. I remember now. And for the first time, the house hesitated. The figures slowed. James looked toward the nearest door. It was numbered 000. He reached for the knob. Inside, something was breathing. But he had to go through. James gripped the knob. Cold. Wet. Like holding bone pulled from earth. He turned it. The door opened without sound. Inside, nothing. An endless black chamber. No floor, no walls, just a starless void. But not empty. A heartbeat pulsed in the dark. A sound he felt in his bones. James stepped inside. He did not fall. He floated forward, drawn by gravity that wasn't there. Then, a voice, not in his ears, but in his skull. You were never supposed to leave us. From the dark, eyes opened. Hundreds. Each reflected a different version of James. In pain. In madness. In surrender. One of them stepped forward. Same face. Same clothes. But his mouth was stitched shut, and his hands were raw. Bloody stumps where fingers should be. And still, he pointed. At James's heart. The version of James that approached him now had no eyes. Only holes. Smoking. Leaking something dark. Around them, whispers gathered, layered voices in different versions of his own tone. We stayed behind. We obeyed. You remembered. That was your sin. Suddenly the blackness broke apart. The void fractured, as if it were just a skin covering something beneath. And from within rose a structure. The true center of the house. The core. A floating chamber of rooms, suspended in endless night. Each door spun slowly around a pulsing mass, an ancient heart. Beating. Dripping. Breathing in memories. It had veins that wrapped through the walls of every room James had ever been in. Through the gallery, the attic, the red door, the playroom. James understood now. The house wasn't a place. It was a being. And he was inside its mind. From the center of the core rose a platform. And on it stood a figure. Tall. Regal. Wearing no mask. Its face was James's, but older. Wiser. And utterly empty. Not cruel. Not angry. Just, inevitable. "I am the version of you who never left," the architect said. James swallowed. "What are you?" "I am memory without mercy. The self that stayed when you abandoned what hurt. The shadow behind your spine. The one who held the door open for the house." The core pulsed around them. Doors opened in flashes, each revealing tragedies James had chosen to forget. A funeral. A betrayal. A child's scream. "You think forgetting protects you," the architect said. "But all it does is feed the house." The architect held out his hand. "Come. Become whole." James shook his head. "No." The architect lowered his hand, expression unreadable. "You refuse healing." "I refuse you," James said. "You're not healing. You're rot dressed in memory." The core trembled. The lights dimmed. The house noticed. For the first time, it reacted with fear. "You built this place," the architect said. "Every lie. Every silence. Every death you stepped around. Then I'll tear it down." A scream rose from the spinning rooms. Not human. Not singular. The cry of every forgotten moment, shrieking as if burned. Doors burst open. The watchers poured in, mirror-masked beings, hundreds, crawling, flying, weeping. James turned. Ran. Up a staircase that hadn't been there a second ago. Each step pulled him toward a door of white light. The only one. The exit. The white door stood at the top of an impossible staircase. It glowed with warmth, not artificial light, but something older. Real. The house screamed behind James. The walls cracked. The mirror beings shattered into shards that bled whispers. He climbed. Every step burned. Every step peeled memory from his skin. He saw everything as he passed. His father reaching for help during the accident. Melissa calling. The child in the playroom, screaming. Himself, again and again, turning away. He kept climbing. The house reached for him with smoke tendrils. Screamed with voices of people who never existed. James reached the door. Touched the knob. It was warm. Alive. He opened it. And light swallowed him whole. The light engulfed him, not blinding, but cleansing. James felt weight fall from him, like layers of soaked clothing peeled away one by one. He expected to fall. But instead, he stood. Feet on solid ground. Grass. Wind in the trees. He blinked. The sky was pale blue. A sun hung above, gentle and still. He was standing on a hill. The house was gone. No fog. No doors. No watchers. He turned in a slow circle, breathing deeply. Birdsong. Real. A memory surfaced, playing in his backyard as a child. Summer. That same breeze. That same warmth. He dropped to his knees, laughing. He was free. Then, he noticed the scar on his hand. Still there. Still burned. Still bleeding. And on the wind came a voice he recognized. "You left part of yourself behind." James stood again, heart racing. He felt wrong. The world was calm, but too calm. Trees swayed without sound. Shadows fell in the wrong direction. The wind stopped and started in loops. He walked forward. Each step left no footprint. His reflection in a puddle showed him smiling, but he wasn't. A low hum vibrated beneath his feet. Familiar. The house wasn't gone. It had simply changed shape. It had followed him out. Something had slipped through the white door with him. Something that now wore the world like a mask. James ran his hands over his chest. His heartbeat was slower than it should be. Too slow. He opened his mouth to scream. But no sound came out. Not even a breath. He ran. Down the hill. Through a grove of trees that repeated, over and over. Each clearing identical. He marked one with a scratch on a tree trunk. 10 minutes later, he passed it again. The scratch was still fresh. He wasn't in the real world. He was in a copy. A memory. The house had let him believe he had escaped. But the walls were just dressed differently. Then he saw it. The seam. A ripple in the sky. Like a film reel stuttering. At the edge of the field, reality peeled, just slightly, like a curtain. Behind it, he saw blackness. And beyond that, doors. Still spinning around the core. Still waiting. James had two choices. Live in the illusion. Or go back and finish what he started. He reached toward the seam. The world flickered. Fought back. The ground shook. His reflection in a pond screamed silently, begging him to stop. But he touched it. And it tore. He fell again, down and down through the layers of the house's mind. Past every door. Every version of himself that had given up. Until he landed, hard, in a room made of mirrors. Thousands of Jameses stared back at him. Some were monsters. Some were children. Some were gone. But one stepped forward. The only one still whole. And it spoke. "I'm the last version of you that remembers who you were," the reflection said. James stared at it. "Then help me end this." The reflection smiled. "You don't end the house. You accept it." "No. You built it. Every forgotten pain. Every lie. Every silence. You didn't just get trapped. You created the walls. I'm not that person anymore." The mirrors began to crack. The world shivered. "You can't run from who you were," said the reflection, "but you can choose who walks out of here." It stepped forward. Merged into him. And James screamed as every moment he had tried to forget burned through his blood like fire. But he stood up. Still James. And he faced the final staircase. At the top, a door of glass. Where the real world waited. Each step groaned beneath James's feet, not from age, but resistance. As if the house itself was reluctant to let him go. The glass door at the top shimmered like water. It reflected not just his face, but every face he had worn inside the house. Crying, screaming, dying. He climbed anyway. The air thinned. Whispers faded. No watchers. No mirrors. Just him. And his burden. The final step cracked under his weight but held. He reached for the handle. It was smooth. Warm. Alive. His heart pounded. He opened the door. He stepped into a hospital room. Fluorescent lights hummed softly. Machines beeped. A figure lay in a bed. Thin. Pale. Unconscious. Him. James staggered backward. What is this?" A nurse walked past him, unseeing. A doctor checked a chart. Still no improvement. Coma's holding steady. "We're on month 3. James reached for the bed. His fingers passed through. This was real. He was in a coma. The house was not just a prison. It was a cocoon. Formed by his own mind. And now he stood in a space between forgetting and waking. A voice spoke behind him. The architect. But smaller now. Human. "You can stay. The house will keep you safe." James turned. The architect had tears in his eyes. Not cruel anymore. Just tired. You won't feel the guilt here. You won't feel anything. James looked down at his own body, pale and motionless in the bed. A screen beeped slowly. You let us in, the architect said. We only built what you asked for. James didn't speak. Instead, he walked to the window. Sunlight streamed in. He felt it. Warmth. Real. He turned back. No, he whispered. It's time I felt everything again. The hospital room trembled. Walls cracked. The house, the true house, screamed. Its foundations, memory, regret, silence, crumbled. The architect knelt, clutching his face. Don't do this, he begged. James walked into himself. Lay down inside the body. And breathed. For the first time in months. Machines beeped faster. A nurse cried out. He's responding. The house roared, one final cry of a dying God. James opened his eyes. The world was bright. And real. The ceiling above him was dull white. Doctors marveled at his recovery. You were gone, one whispered. 3 months. We thought. James didn't talk much. How could he explain it? They called it a coma. A medical event. Trauma-induced. But he remembered everything. The rooms. The watchers. The architect. The house's voice whispering from behind the walls of his mind. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard it breathe. Still alive. Still waiting. A week later, they let him go. His apartment felt small. Unfamiliar. He opened the windows. Let in air. Light. Noise. But sometimes, when the house was quiet and the wind didn't move, he could feel its breath again. He removed every mirror. Every single one. But in the blank space where they had hung, sometimes he still saw reflections. Wrong ones. Smiling when he didn't. Bleeding when he wasn't. Watching. On the 12th night after returning, his phone buzzed. He hadn't touched it in hours. A message. Unknown number. He froze before opening it. Then he did. Room 000 is open. James stared at the screen for a long time. Then powered the phone off. Removed the battery. Threw it in the trash. But he knew. The house was not just in his mind. It was a system. A place. And it had more rooms. James started looking into others. Coma survivors. People who reported dreams that lasted months. People who described a house, though the details varied. A gallery. A red door. A basement that hummed. Some never woke up. Those who did. Most disappeared within a year. Some were found in abandoned houses, faces turned to walls. Others left behind only drawings, staircases that led nowhere, watchers without faces, the white door. James catalogued them. Mapped the patterns. He began to understand. The house was not personal. It was hungry. And widening. James started dreaming again. Not of the house itself, but of echoes. Doors in new places. A shed behind his building that hadn't been there yesterday. A mirror in a diner's restroom that showed him walking in twice. But not out. And in the corner of every dream, a tall figure. Coat dragging. Silver face. Waiting. Always waiting. James began to sleep less. But the dreams found him anyway. Because once you've been inside the house, a part of it stays with you. In the corners. In the quiet. In the space between thoughts. It waits. It remembers. The cracks appeared slowly. At first, James thought they were just signs of old drywall, splits in the ceiling above his bed, tiny fractures near the corners of his apartment. But they grew. And behind them, he sometimes heard breathing. Soft. Like a sleeper beneath a thin sheet. Once, late at night, he pressed his ear to one. A whisper came through. "You're still inside." He stepped back. The crack spread wider. He hadn't owned a mirror in weeks. Hadn't dared. But one morning, there it was. On his bathroom wall. Frameless. Circular. Silver. He approached it slowly, heart hammering. In it, he saw not himself, but the playroom. The red door. His 6-year-old self sitting cross-legged on the floor. "Don't open it," the boy whispered. James reached for the mirror. It was warm. Wet. The surface rippled beneath his fingers. And in that instant, he felt the house behind it. Awake. He wasn't alone anymore. Others began showing up. A woman outside his building, eyes unfocused, muttering about a staircase with no top step. A man at the grocery store who stared into a freezer for 20 minutes, then whispered, "It's watching from the cold places." James approached him. The man flinched. "You got out," he said. But it followed. That night, James found a note under his door. "Room 000 is open." Again. Written in his own handwriting. He fought sleep. Tried every method. Caffeine. Lights on. Television. But exhaustion wins every war. He closed his eyes. And opened them in the second house. It looked the same at first, same hallway, same wallpaper, same chandelier. But it was worse. Deeper. He could feel it now, beneath his feet, growing. Feeding. The doors were open this time. Each showed someone else, others trapped, others screaming. Some were watching him. One pointed. At him. Mouthed the word, "Architect." He ran. But the house bent around his flight. Every door he passed opened to a reflection of his new life. The apartment. The cracked walls. The mirrors returning. "You brought it back with you," said a voice, his own, echoing through the beams. "You're building it now." He turned a corner. And found the core again. Still spinning. Still alive. At its center, a throne had formed. Empty. Waiting. With his name carved into the wood. "Welcome home." James stood before the throne. Wood, bone, metal, impossible to tell what it was made from. It pulsed gently with each beat of the core. Not as a heart now, but as a mind. It recognized him. The silver-faced figures knelt in the shadows. The doors stopped spinning. The house waited. He heard his own voice whisper from the air itself. "We don't trap people. We give them shelter from pain." James stepped forward. The floor groaned like a living throat. He looked into the throne's carved name. James Carr. But beneath it, new letters burned in. Architect. The truth unfurled before him, not in words, but in visions. The house was not a single building. It was a system of mental survival. Every time a person turned away from trauma, a room formed. Every time someone silenced grief, the wallpaper curled. Every time memory was suppressed, a hallway stretched further. Millions of rooms. Billions of hosts. The house had no original form. It grew inside minds. It didn't keep people prisoner. They came willingly. But someone had to maintain the foundation. A caretaker. A memory keeper. An architect. And now, the house had chosen James. But James refused. He stepped back from the throne. The floor cracked. The silver-faced beings rose, whispering, confused. "You won," the house said through the walls. "You made it out. But you came back. You entered the second house. That was the contract." "No," James said. "You followed me. You wanted me because I escaped." The house groaned, timbers splitting, walls bleeding black memory. "You were perfect," it hissed. "Then find someone else." James turned. Faced the white door, still glowing. One last chance. The watchers lunged. But James ran. He burst through the white door. The house screamed. Collapsed behind him. The core imploded. And then. Silence. James awoke. In his bed. Morning light. No cracks in the walls. No watchers. No mirrors. But he knew the truth now. The house was still out there. It couldn't be destroyed. It lived in others now. In you. In forgotten thoughts. In places you glance at once and never again. The house doesn't chase. It doesn't haunt. It doesn't hunt. It simply waits.